Today, we will talk about a case that a lot of people already think they know. But when you actually slow it down and walk through it step by step, it starts to feel very different. Because at first, nothing about this story looks unusual. It's a young couple traveling across the country, posting online, documenting a road trip that seems pretty normal on the surface. And then, somewhere along the way, communication stops. One of them comes home, the other one doesn't. And what follows becomes one of the most followed missing person cases in recent memory. This is the story of Gabby Petito. Welcome to Behind the Yellow Tape. I'm Mimi, and here we share some of the most spine-chilling, gut-stirring, mysterious crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So if mystery and crime is your cup of tea, then you'll definitely get your fill here. We upload every Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you love a midweek dose of suspense, whether from your favorite seat, the car, before bed, or during your favorite activity, then leave a like to help build the algorithm. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. Now, let's take a step behind the yellow tape. Before anything else, I always think it's important to understand who the person actually was. Gabby was 22 years old. She was originally from New York, later living in Florida. From everything known about her, she was creative, very focused on documenting life, taking photos, recording moments, and sharing experiences. She wanted to build something around travel and content creation. And in 2021, she decided to fully commit to that idea. She planned a cross-country van trip with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. The goal was simple: travel, visit national parks, and document everything along the way. At that point, it looked like a lifestyle change, not anything out of the ordinary. They left in July 2021, and early on, things appeared normal. They traveled through several states like Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. Gabby posted pictures and updates along the way: hiking spots, scenic views, and van life content. Nothing in those early posts suggested anything was wrong, and that something was worth sitting with for a second. Because so often what we see online is only a very small piece of what's actually happening in real life. Things start to shift in mid-August. On August 12th, police in Moab, Utah respond to a call reporting a disturbance between a couple. That couple is Gabby and Brian. A witness had seen some kind of argument and called it in. When officers arrived, they separate them and speak to them individually. Gabby is emotional during the interaction. She's crying and upset, and she talks about being overwhelmed. Brian appears calm and composed during his interview. Police ultimately decide not to press charges. Instead, they separate them for the night. Brian goes to a hotel, and Gabby stays with the van. At the time, it's treated as a relatively minor incident. But later on, this moment becomes one of the most heavily analyzed parts of the entire case. After that night in Utah, they continue traveling, and from the outside, things still look mostly normal for a bit. Gabby uploads content, the trip continues. But internally, something starts to shift. Communication begins to slow, messages become less frequent, and eventually they stop altogether. By the end of August, Gabby's family says they had their last confirmed contact with her. There is a text message sent after that point, but her family later questions whether she actually sent it herself. And that detail matters because it suggests that something may have already changed behind the scenes, something that wasn't visible publicly yet. On September 1st, Gabby's husband returns to Florida. He arrives driving the van they had been traveling in, but Gabby was not with him. There is no public explanation, no immediate report, and no clear communication to her family. And at that point, the situation shifts from confusing to concerning. As days pass, Gabby's family becomes more worried. They are unable to reach her. And on September 11th, she is officially reported missing. Once law enforcement gets involved, the case begins to spread quickly. The attention turns towards Brian, since he was the last known person to be with her. But shortly after, he also disappears. At this point, the case becomes national news. Search teams begin focusing on areas where Gabby was last known to be. Wyoming becomes the first major focus. There's also a video recorded by another traveler that shows a van matching theirs parked in a remote area. That detail helps investigators narrow down the search, and slowly, the timeline begins to tighten. On September 19th, remains are discovered in Wyoming. They are later confirmed to be Gabby, and at that point, the case officially moves from a missing persons investigation to a homicide, and everything about the tone of the case changes. But up until then, there's still uncertainty, still hope in a sense that she might be found alive, but that moment removes that possibility. Meanwhile, Gabby's husband is also missing. Search efforts shift to Florida, particularly a large area called the Carlton Reserve. In its dense, difficult terrain, the search takes weeks. During this time, public attention stays locked on the case. People are trying to understand what happened and why. On October 20th, remains are found in the reserve. They are confirmed to be Brian. Near the remains, investigators find a notebook. According to authorities, the contents include statements in which he takes responsibility for Gabby's death. With that, the investigation reaches its conclusion. And because Brian is deceased, there is no trial. This is the part where I'd like to pause on a little bit, because when you go back and look at this timeline, what stands out is how normal everything looked in the beginning. There wasn't a single obvious moment where the entire situation made sense from the outside. It was a gradual shift, small details that only really stand out when you already know the ending. And that is the part of what made this case so widely followed. At the center of all this is Gabby Petito. Not just a case or a headline, but a young woman who had a life, plans, and a future she was building. And if there's anything this story leaves you with, it's probably awareness about relationships, about what we see online, the perception of people's lives, and about how much we don't always see behind the surface. If you listened all the way through, I appreciate you being here. And as always, make sure you tune in every Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Mimi, and this has been A Step Behind the Yellow Tape.